fucked up this time!
With a mob!
Oh shit, wait, no!
Mel Ferd is an exceptional journalist in St. Roma Village. He has been working tirelessly to expose BTH, a pharmaceutical company that has been dumping toxic waste into rivers and lakes for decades. Shortly after, his co-worker, JJ, buzzes the door, and he lets her in. JJ proudly announces that she has obtained evidence that will undoubtedly expose BTH's unethical practices and ultimately bring down Robert Garbinger, the company's CEO. Through the security camera feed, they notice that a group of men had tailed JJ. Mel tells her to run with the evidence. She jumps off a railing and unfortunately breaks the hardware containing the evidence but manages to escape. Upstairs, the men close in on Mel and kill him with a harpoon gun. His death is brutal and tragic. The men decide not to pursue JJ, dismissing her as a nobody since she no longer has the evidence. Elsewhere in St. Roma Village, Winston wakes up to prepare breakfast for his stepson, Wade. He lost his wife, Shelley, to cancer several years ago, and Wade has never been the same, completely shutting himself off. Winston can't even afford counseling for him, as his job as a janitor at BTH barely covers the food they eat each day. Later, Winston is about to take Wade to his school bus stop when they both notice their neighbor Daisy being coerced by a man named Spence, who happens to be the son of a local gang leader. He is pressuring her to sell her property. Daisy reluctantly agrees, then asks for her cat back, but Spence callously throws the cat out onto the street. Winston brings Daisy's cat back to her. But Wade walks off, furious at Winston for not helping Daisy. With a sigh, Winston explains that sometimes doing nothing is the right choice, and that Wade will understand when he gets older. To change the subject, he asks Wade about his dance audition today. Wade stays silent. Winston says wistfully, "Your mom would be so proud of you." An hour later, Winston arrives at BTH. He mops the floors and takes out the trash. Suddenly, he receives a call from the hospital regarding his test results. At the hospital, Dr. Walla informs Winston that the headaches he's been experiencing over the past few weeks are actually due to an aggressive brain tumor. He has approximately 6 months to a year to live. Winston is devastated, worrying about Wade's future. The doctor mentions an advanced medicine that could treat the tumor and says Winston's work insurance might actually cover it. Winston immediately calls BTH's insurance agent, explaining that he needs money for medication for his tumor. The agent informs him that his platinum tier plan does not cover the gold tier plan, which is required for his medication. Winston is crushed. Meanwhile, Robert Garbinger, the CEO of BTH, meets with his brother Fritz, who is also the head of security at BTH. Robert is furious at Fritz for letting JJ escape. Fritz blames the Killer Nuts, a rap group that works for Robert. But Robert dismisses his excuse and orders Fritz to kill JJ at any cost. Later, Fritz visits the Killer Nuts and orders them to find JJ. The group tracks her to a house she is renting, but when they search it, they come up empty-handed. After they leave, JJ takes out her bag and quietly leaves, ignoring her landlord's questions. That afternoon, Wade anxiously watches the auditions of his classmates. When it's finally his turn, the other students jeer and boo him. Embarrassed and scared, he walks out. Later, he discovers that someone has posted a video of him walking away on social media. Night falls. Winston searches online for BTH health plans and comes across a news article that says BTH is organizing a fundraising gala tonight. At that moment, Wade comes home accompanied by Daisy. She explains that she saw Wade looking sad and decided to drop him off. Winston thanks her and apologizes for not helping earlier. Daisy brushes it off, saying, "You saved Mr. Treats." Then Winston asks Wade about his audition, but he says nothing. Winston comments that although Shelley wasn't a great performer, her attitude and presentation on stage made her stand out. To cheer Wade up, he puts on music and dons a tutu. Wade looks at him unimpressed at first, but gradually softens. Wade then grabs the envelope containing Winston's brain scan, but Winston quickly takes it back, insisting it's nothing. He tells Wade he has some work to do and leaves. He arrives at the gala and sneaks in through the back entrance. Meanwhile, Robert and his assistant Kissy attempt to win the mayor's support to secure funding for BTH. Then, Robert spots Spence and quietly follows him. Smiling, Robert greets Thad, the leader of a dangerous gang and the one who funded BTH when it first started. Thad sternly orders Robert to get his act together and produce medicines that don't cause severe side effects, a factor that has caused BTH's stock to plummet. Later, Robert receives the Citizen Shepherd Award. After the ceremony, Winston approaches Robert's table and introduces himself. He tells Robert that he has been working at TBH as a janitor for 13 years and that his insurance does not cover the medicine he needs. He also shares that his son has already lost his mother. Kissy and the others at the table mock Winston. Robert, however, instructs Kissy to take care of him. Overjoyed, Winston thanks Robert and leaves with Kissy. She tells him to wait downstairs, saying she will get the voucher. Unfortunately, Winston gets locked out and overhears Kissy and Robert laughing at him. Robert tells Kissy to fire Winston. Frustrated, Winston drives to the BTH factory and, using his ID card, enters inside. JJ, spotting her chance, sneaks inside and goes on to collect toxic waste to expose BTH. Meanwhile, Fritz spots them and calls in the killer nuts. Broken and betrayed, Winston grabs his mop, dumping it into the radioactive waste, and, in a desperate act, uses it to steal from his own company. As he runs, he collides with JJ, and the stolen money bursts into flames due to the chemical reaction. The killer nuts arrive. JJ steals Winston's card and flees, with Winston closely following. The killer nuts surround him, forcing JJ to leave him behind. Winston pleads for his life, but they shoot him dead. Frustrated, Fritz scolds them for killing the wrong person and orders them to dispose of the body. The group dumps Winston into the chemical waste. As JJ is about to leave, she is unknowingly spotted by the killer nuts. She then heads to meet Mel to hand over the evidence, which we saw at the beginning. Meanwhile, Winston screams as his cells and DNA mutate, transforming him into an alien-like creature. He stumbles toward his home, noticing Daisy signing off her property. Climbing up to his house, Winston hears Wade sounding worried and asking Winston to call back. As he tries to get inside, Wade throws a bowl at him, causing Winston to land on Spence's car. Alarmed, Spence fires at him, but Winston's body heals instantly. He charges at Spence, attempting to disarm him, and ends up severing his arm. A crowd gathers. Winston flees, and Daisy quickly retrieves the land deed she had signed. The police arrive, and witnesses describe Winston as a monstrous creature. One even claims he ate a baby and had a tail. Winston disappears into the forest to hide. The next day, Winston wakes up in a tent and notices a man nearby. The man introduces himself as Guthrie, and Winston introduces himself in return. Guthrie explains that he found him unconscious in the forest and brought him to the tent. "What happened?" Guthrie asks. Winston sadly explains that he is dying. Guthrie mocks him, saying, "Everyone is dying, so your situation isn't special." Winston mutters, "That makes me feel a lot better." Undeterred, Guthrie tells Winston he was once a doctor and got arrested for protesting his hospital's budget cuts. He tells Winston that life is unpredictable and advises him to spend his remaining time with the people he loves. Winston laments that his son thinks he's a monster, to which Guthrie responds, "Then show him your good side." Winston notices his mop, and Guthrie explains he recovered it from a nearby lagoon. Winston takes it and leaves to see Wade. Meanwhile, Wade watches the news, where a reporter mentions that a restaurant called Miss Meat has been taken hostage by an extremist political group called the Nasty Lads. The leader is furious about the restaurant's recent woke change of mascot from Mr. Meat to Miss Meat. Passing by the restaurant, Winston sees the chaos outside. Inside, customers and employees panic as armed men terrorize them, even taunting a blind woman. Police attempt to negotiate and ask the extremists to release the hostages, but the group responds by firing at the officers. Having had enough, Winston storms inside, turning the restaurant into a massacre and eliminating the group mercilessly. Outside, police raise their guns at Winston when he comes out, but a restaurant employee stops them, telling them that Winston saved their lives. The news quickly interviews Winston, asking how it feels to be a hero. He looks into the camera and replies simply, "Sometimes you gotta do something." Wade recognizes the phrase and the voice. The report also mentions that kids are already calling Winston the Toxic Avenger. Afterward, Winston retreats to a rooftop building to pee, only to discover that his urine has turned acidic. Meanwhile, Spence, still alive, points at the TV. Thad, furious, tells his henchmen that a small green creature is responsible for Spence's condition and orders them to kill it. At Robert's mansion, Robert reprimands Kissy and Fritz for Winston's mutation, pointing out that the mutated creature and Winston are one and the same. He then orders his employees to determine how Winston's mutation occurred. One employee explains that BTH's waste has always been toxic, but when combined with an extremely rare genetic marker, it can trigger powerful mutation. Robert tells them to recreate the mutation, but they say it is only possible if Winston is here. Robert instructs Fritz to kidnap him, but Fritz replies, he has a child. At the same time, JJ visits Winston's home. She tells Wade everything that happened, explaining that she believes his dad has the power to expose BTH. Wade corrects her, stepdad, and accuses her of dragging Winston into the mess. JJ insists he was already involved, as she saw him running away with the money. She reveals her mother died due to BTH's bio-booster. Shortly after, the killer nuts arrive at Winston's house, prompting JJ and Wade to flee. One member plants a tracking device on Wade. Elsewhere, Wade and JJ encounter Winston. Wade demands to know what's going on. Winston admits the truth about his brain tumor and how he also tried to steal money from his company to pay for the medicine. Hurt, Wade questions, "You were going to die and didn't tell me?" Just then, Thad's gang members arrive and shoot at Winston. JJ grabs Wade and runs despite his protest to help Winston. Winston awakens, kills the shooter, and flees. The gang relentlessly pursues him, but he systematically takes them out. Meanwhile, the killer nuts tracked down JJ and Wade. They shoot JJ and kidnap Wade. Meanwhile, Winston, while searching for Wade, comes across JJ lying unconscious on the side of the road. He takes her to Guthrie. Guthrie tells him she's dead. But thinking quickly, Winston uses his healing blood on her gunshot wound. Miraculously, it works. At Robert's mansion, Fritz brings in Wade. Robert orders them to throw the boy into the shed, and they do. Inside, Kissy expresses concern that Robert's plan might be too harsh for the boy, but he brushes it off, telling her to trust him. Back with Winston, JJ joins him by the lagoon. She thanks him for saving her. Winston grimly explains that they took Wade to get to him. JJ nods and informs him that the last time they met was the night her mentor Mel was killed, as they planned to expose BTH. Winston, determined, says, "We will expose BTH for what they really are." Together, they head to Gonzales Park, where the killer nuts are performing their usual Friday routine. JJ disconnects their microphones, and Winston enters with a microphone of his own. He brutally takes them all down. The crowd is shocked at Winston killing their favorite band. Afterwards, he addresses the crowd saying, "The killer nuts are sick people who do dirty work, like killing for Robert. They all got rich, and you all got sick." Winston and JJ interrogate one of the killer nuts members, who reveals Robert's location. They head to Robert's mansion, spotting two guards at the front. JJ tries to seduce them, but both end up shooting each other. They move deeper onto the mansion's lawn and encounter strange statues. As they approach, the statues emit a gas, knocking both of them out. Hours later, they wake up chained, with BTH employees preparing to take samples from Winston. Robert mocks him, saying that Winston's attempt to steal from him could now make him millions if his employees can replicate the mutation pattern. The employees take sample after sample until Winston passes out. Robert carries the sample outside and comes face to face with Thad, who turns on the news. The broadcast reports that, following Winston's allegations, the Federal Bureau has begun investigating BTH. Thad glares at Robert and says he is a loose end who could rat him out if arrested. As Thad takes his gun out, Robert asks for one last drink and takes a sip of Winston's sample. The serum grants him feral strength, and he kills Thad and his associates. Moments later, Kissy enters the living room and finds Robert completely unhinged, his body rejecting the serum. Desperate, she uses the last drop herself and orders the employees to perfect Winston's mutation. She also commands them to kill Wade. Fritz intervenes, saying he's just a kid, but Kissy, furious, starts beating him, insisting she's doing all of this to save his brother. Back with Winston, JJ shouts for him to wake up, warning that they're going to kill Wade. She blames herself for getting caught, saying, "Mel would be so pissed at me." Hearing this, Winston uses his urine, now acidic, to unlock both his and JJ's chain. They rush outside and spot Wade in the shed. Winston tries to take out a guard, but a bullet hits a gas tank, causing the shed to explode. Winston is devastated. Robert emerges wielding an axe. They fight, with Winston gaining the upper hand and nearly killing Robert, until Wade emerges alive. It turns out Fritz had saved him before the explosion. Wade calls Winston Dad for the first time and pleads with him not to kill Robert, saying, "You are a good person." Robert launches one final attack, but Winston impales him with his mop. Winston rushes to Wade, but Kissy impales him with a wooden plank and slashes Fritz's throat. She turns to attack JJ, but Winston tackles her onto spilled fuel, which ignites, killing Kissy. Winston wakes up in the hospital. He spots Dr. Walla, who is accompanied by a blind federal agent, one of the hostages he saved at Miss Meat. With Robert's crimes fully exposed, the agent agrees to sweep everything about him under the rug. But others associated with Robert aren't so lucky. Dr. Walla also informs Winston that his mutation has cured his tumor. Outside his room, Winston is greeted by dozens of grateful citizens, including Wade, who embraces him. Fritz is shown to have survived, though he now speaks through a voice modulator and will likely face jail time. Winston watches proudly as Wade performs at the school's talent show.